The Eastern Front, 1941. German infantry units advancing towards Smolensk hear a distant, unnatural howl, a rising mechanical shriek unlike artillery, bombs, or tank fire. Seconds later, an entire tree line erupts into fire. The ground shakes. Air pressure collapses. Soldiers are thrown to the dirt, deafened, disoriented, unable to locate the source of the attack. This was their first encounter with the BM-13, Katyusha, rocket launcher, a weapon so psychologically devastating that German frontline reports referred to it simply as Stalin's organ. It was not precise. It was not sophisticated. But it was fast, overwhelming, and capable of erasing a company-sized position in under 10 seconds. The concept behind Katyusha began in the late 1930s at the WWII, Reactive Scientific Research Institute, where Soviet engineers such as Ivan Gvey and Georgy Lang-Mak developed early solid-fuel rockets. By 1938, prototypes of the M8 and M13 rockets were tested. In June 1941, days after Operation Barbarossa began, the first operational Katyusha battery, Experimental Battery No. 1, commanded by Captain Ivan Flyarov, launched a barrage against a German concentration point at Orsha. German intelligence misidentified the attack as heavy bomber artillery from the rear. They had no idea the strike came from trucks. The Soviet High Command immediately understood the weapon's potential and ordered mass production. Unlike German Nebelwerfers, which used conventional launch tubes, the Katyusha used rails mounted onto trucks, most commonly the ZIS-6 and later the Studebaker US-6 provided through Lend-Lease. It had three defining strengths. Mobility: the full battery could reposition in minutes. Volume of fire: 16 to 48 rockets launched within 7 to 10 seconds. Shock effect: the psychological impact often exceeded physical destruction. The rockets themselves lacked precision, but in mass volleys they were catastrophic. They produced fragmentation, overpressure, intense heat, and fires across wide areas. The weapon's genius was its lack of sophistication: cheap to build, fast to produce, deadly in saturation. By late 1941, Wehrmacht divisions on the central sector were submitting urgent complaints. Enemy forces possessed a new concentrated bombardment weapon, capable of leveling entire defensive positions instantly. Field reports from the 78th Infantry Division described Katyusha fire as unpredictable, uncounterable, and devastating. The distinctive sound, a howling shriek, made soldiers fear the weapon even before impact. Captured diaries from the 29th Motorized Division noted: "Artillery you hear whistling. Bombs you hear falling. Katyusha gives no warning. Only screaming." A typical Katyusha battery operated in groups of 4 to 6 launchers. Once firing began, they had 60 seconds to relocate before German counter-battery radar triangulated their position. Their doctrine was simple: arrive at pre-selected firing grid. Launch full salvo. Move to secondary position. Reload and cover. Repeat. This mobility made them nearly impossible to destroy. Katyushas were often used at the opening of an offensive to break enemy lines, paralyze communication, and shatter morale long before tanks and infantry arrived. A full Katyusha regiment could blanket up to 30 hectares of terrain in a single barrage. German trenches, machine gun nests, and forward observation posts simply ceased to exist. At Stalingrad, Soviet commanders coordinated multiple rocket regiments to hit the same sector in staggered waves, generating intense firestorms inside German-held districts. Survivor accounts describe soldiers losing hearing permanently, entire platoons buried alive under collapsed trenches, units retreating without orders during barrages, burned equipment, melted ammunition, shattered optics. Katyushas were not accurate, but accuracy was irrelevant. Their purpose was destruction by overwhelming force. During the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, the Soviets deployed over 3,000 Katyusha launchers in various configurations. When the German Ninth Army attempted breakthroughs near Panayrai, they were met with saturating rocket fire that reduced entire armored spearheads to twisted metal. Tank crews reported: "The ground trembled. Turrets vibrated. Vision blocks shattered. Even inside armored vehicles, the concussive force caused disorientation and panic. Katyushas became a symbol of Soviet defensive power, the thunder before the counterattack. German infantry rated Katyusha barrages as more terrifying than Nebelwerfer fire, conventional artillery, dive bombing attacks, close-range tank assaults. Reasons: 1. The sound. Katyusha rockets produced a demonic scream due to exhaust turbulence. Soldiers often broke before the rockets even landed. 2. The volume. Dozens of rockets in seconds, a wall of fire impossible to hide from. 3. The destruction. Mass fragmentation shredded trenches, bunkers, and light armor. 4. The unpredictability. Poor accuracy meant barrages landed randomly across wide areas, increasing fear. 5. The mobility. Striking and vanishing made countermeasures nearly useless. By 1944, the Soviet Union was producing thousands of rocket launchers and millions of M13, M20, and M30 rockets each month. Katyushas accompanied nearly every Red Army front. 1st Belarusian, 1st Ukrainian, Baltic Front, Far Eastern Front. During Operation Bagration in 1944, rocket artillery helped annihilate Army Group Center, collapsing German defensive sectors before infantry even arrived. By the war's end, the Katyusha became one of the most iconic Soviet weapons ever produced. It represented the Red Army's philosophy of warfare: overwhelming force, industrial saturation, psychological domination, mobility over precision. After 1945, BM-13 systems spread across communist-aligned nations and were used in conflicts from Korea to the Middle East. For the Germans who survived the Eastern Front, the memory remained vivid, a weapon whose sound alone could break even veteran soldiers. A weapon that turned the battlefield into a storm of fire. A weapon they never forgot.